Welcome. We're going to continue with the format. So I'm going to have a roll call for everybody to say whatever you want to, what your current activities are, but um, also taking agenda items that we'll go back to and spend more time on after we do the roll call. Try to get through the roll call um, in less than half an hour if we can. Okay, my name is Dave, KV0S, and this week I've been working on K9Q radio. I went back, uh, blew away my operating system, rebuilt it, and rebuilt the software, and just to get used to doing that over and over. So I did that, and let's see what that's about it. And I don't have any agenda items for myself. Next on the list is Nathaniel, W2 NAF. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Dave. Just, moving things along. As I said, did some interviews this week. I'm very interested in any updates on the board design for the Clementine SDR. W2NF, back to net.
Okay. Board. Okay. And next on the list is Michael, AAK. Go ahead, Michael.
Oh, thanks very much. Greetings to everyone listening, and it's nice to see Phil here. Back to you, Dave.
Yes. And next on the list, we have Dave, KED0 EAG. Go ahead, Dave.
Hello, yeah, I've been working a lot on PCB layout, and I've got something I hope within a short time to be able to send off. I've got almost everything, I think everything sorted out. I've been cleaning up a lot of the mess I made to begin with. But other than that, I've had a lot of help from good people, from Bob and Phil and everybody. And also I do have some other items that might be germane that I could mention later on.
Okay. Are they all in the board PCB section?
Pretty much in that scope.
Okay. Okay. Are you done?
Yep.
Next on the list, we have Jim, K4BS A?
BSE.
E. Oh, sorry.
The big sleepy elephant.
Okay.
Well, I've been kind of goofing off the last week. I had my knee replaced a week ago today. And so I've been just lying around most of the time. It's started healing, and then I kind of hit a soft spot where it wasn't doing much. So hopefully I'll get past that soon. Anyway, before that happened, I finally got my magnetometer buried in the ground about as far as I'm going to get it. I couldn't quite get 3 feet on it because of some local limitations. But I'm down at least 2.5 feet on it. And what I thought I would do is to just build kind of a bird cage configuration to go over the top of it that I can put some insulation in. And that should further reduce the extremes at the top of the PVC pipe feel. And that is working, and I'm waiting for my SD card for the RF grape experiment. I've got all the pieces. I don't have that hooked up yet. I have been having a problem getting down to my shack in the basement to do anything the last few days, mainly because my wife is terrified of me getting on the stairs. I keep assuring her I've done it with the physical therapist. I've done it with our daughter. I can do it again. But she doesn't like the idea one bit. Anyway, that's about it from here right now. A lot of belly aching and a little bit of progress. Back to net, K4BSE.
Well, you could keep getting better. If it isn't one thing, it's another.
Yeah.
Next on the list, we have, let's see, the list keeps shifting on me. Bill, AB4EJ. Go ahead, Bill.
Thanks, Dave. Well, I've been mostly working on getting things ready. I burned a whole bunch of chips for the grape team, and I did another 6 or 8 of them today for the last 3 holdouts who hadn't created their instruments. Plus, we're going to create 4 test systems and run them. And been working on some things we got to clean up on the server, and helping my wife get over her. She had a knee replacement about 11 months ago, and she was worse off after it than before. So now she had another surgery last week to remove scar tissue and this and that. So working with her quite a bit, and she's got to remember that the scar tissue comes from sitting around too much after you have the surgery. And what you got to do is you got to get up and move, no matter how much it hurts. You got to get up and move and break that scar tissue. Otherwise, it just proliferates. So
I've heard that.
I'm feeling for you, Jim. Anyway, that's about all from here. Back to Ned.
Do you have any agenda items?
No.
Okay. Next on the list is Bob in 5BRG. Go ahead, Bob.
Oh, hello, everybody. I'm working pretty hard here trying to get everything functioning so I can collect data and get data started streaming. I feel like I've been 1 day away from getting it working for the last 5 days, but still busily trying to test things and hook things up. So that's all I've got. I don't have any agenda items. Thank you.
Yeah. Bob, are you in the north part of Texas or the south? So
I'm
are you
in
going to
the
be?
I'm in the northern part. just
Okay, so you
almost
won't
at the
be
Oklahoma.
real close to this fall eclipse, right?
I'll be pretty close to on the line, but not exactly. 70%.
Okay.
70%.
Okay. Next on the list is David McGaw, N1 HAC. Go ahead, David.
Good evening, everyone on the net. I just had a very long weekend. We had was out at the Niagara Celtic Festival and Highland Games, so we I've missed a bunch of stuff and been busy. I did miss the hurricane, which was a good thing. We had a fair amount of wind here, but nothing major. It was more down on the coast of New Hampshire, and Maine and Nova Scotia took the brunt of it. But it's nice weather out that way, around Buffalo. But right now we're trying to get our projects going. I'm trying to get the AM Doppler redeployed for the eclipse. Not sure we're going to get that to where we'll get useful data, but we're going to give it a try. But other than that, no agenda items.
Okay.
Back to net.
Thank you. And next on the list is Franco, K4VZ. Go ahead, Franco.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Good evening, Dave. This week I've been looking at a similar project to Kane and Q Radio. This project is what Phil and other people worked on 7 years ago, I think, called DFC. And this guy, Steve Pass, I think, AD0ES, had a software called Athena, which is supposed to be, with the GUI, but very similar to what Phil does. Unfortunately, the source code for Athena is not there, so I emailed him. And in a couple of emails, he told me that how the system works. They basically use CUDA, so they use an NVIDIA card to do the FFT, but most of the code seems similar to that. And I'll keep looking because I saw what's his name, John Melton, G0ORX, as a repository called DFC. So I'm going to look in that and maybe I report some more next week. Back to Nat.
Yes, if I remember right, I don't know how much of Steve's code was in John's repository, although John could produce the data stream. Isn't that we'll have Phil confirm that later, but
no agenda items anyhow.
Okay, no agenda items. Okay, next on the list is, let's see, Jay, WB8 SBI. Go ahead, Jay.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Nothing new, no agenda items from up here. So 7-3 to all, take care, stay safe. See you later on down the log.
Okay. Next on the list is Jonathan, KC3EEY. Jonathan?
Hi, everybody. I haven't been able to accomplish much because of various personal things. But there was an observation that was made with some networked VLF receivers that I wanted to mention. One of the receivers in Germany, so there were three receivers at 3 different latitudes that detected a spheric from an ELVS event that occurred close to Puerto Rico. And what was interesting is the receiver in Germany, which was at a different latitude than Italy and the UK, showed the ELF tail, the ELF component, that's the oscillatory component that follows the impulse on the time domain plot. It was inverted, and I thought that was really interesting because there were other situations where there was no inverted polarity. So I thought that was really interesting. I'm also working on some seismic projects and getting some seismic instruments and data capture up and running. And last but not least, I have to finish my 3-channel capture system and start on the H-field receiver. I don't have any agenda items. Back to the net.
Okay. Next on the list would be Phil. Sorry, it just moved. VK6PH. I always forget to leave the A out
Okay,
because
thanks.
I said it with the call sign with the A for so many years.
Yeah. Good morning from Perth. Good evening, everyone. My RX 888's arrived and it's all working fine. So enjoying playing with that. And I'm going through the process of transitioning between learning how to program an FPGA to an FX3, which is a reasonably big mountain to climb for me. But I want to thank Dave, KD0EAG, and Franco, KV4PZ for the support they've given me. It's been fantastic. So thank you so much, guys. The only question I've got is I see the RX 888 uses the SI 5351 synthesizer to generate the clock for the LTT 2208. And I see there's plenty of those boards available on the internet. Most of them use a 25 meg reference clock, but I noticed the RX 888 uses 27 megs. And I just wondered if anybody knew why the clock frequency has been changed. I thought perhaps maybe 25 megs are going to give you a spur at 50, which could be annoying. But no, I'm making good progress. I've got a FX3 on order and starting to look at putting together some hardware to do some more development. But no, all going well. Back to you, Dave.
Okay, any agenda item?
No.
Okay. Next on the list, looks like we have Tom in 5EG. Go ahead, Tom.
Okay, good evening, Dave and the group, everyone in the group. This week I've run, oh gosh, probably close to 100 experiments on KA9Q, trying to figure out the source of the drop packets. And I've narrowed down the list of where things could be. So we probably ought to put that on the agenda and talk about it later.
Okay,
And that's it.
okay. And next on the list, we have Michael, AC0G. Michael, are you there? I think he's traveling right now, but
I kind of faintly hear him.
his mic is muted.
I
In
thought I
fact,
did.
it shows on the screen anyway. Michael, are you there? Maybe he'll come back a little later. Michael was making progress at getting the RX-88 to work with the Leo Bodner GPS. So at least he reported that to Dave and I during the week. I wish he was here to say something. Anyway, I think that's everybody on the list that I can see. I think I haven't dropped anybody. So we'll start. Dave, do you want to talk about board design issues?
Well, I did want to, give Nathaniel whatever kind of an update he'd like that I can provide. What I've been working on is almost ready to send off, at least for a first go round to see if it works. It's more for testing than for any end purpose, but the idea is that it would be a very quick move from there to something more complete. And I did want to reassure him that that's moving well. There are lots of positive things in general. I'm maybe not the best to speak on them, but overall, I think the consensus is that almost anything that we want to do with, we've talked about trying to do with either the RX-888 or at least an early replacement for it are entirely within the realm of aren't fantasies, and probably some interesting things can be done. That also, I went and spent some time after we met last week and talked about design issues. I've had a lot of nervousness about supply and fear that something might go EOL on us, and I'm much reassured, though I'm still reading tea leaves, without a I'd say that the supply of the development modules, which really is the easiest way to implement a radio, is just to use one and not try to duplicate all what's on there. That's supposed to be back to full levels through the distributors by I believe by fourth quarter at the latest, and it looked like Phil in Australia saw 55 or something of them or so on the DigiKey site to supply him. I haven't looked lately on domestic ones, but they do seem to be coming back, and you don't have to pay somebody something exorbitant in China to get one. And also there's Infineon, Cypress seem to be answering any question they get about, are you planning to do a faster or newer USB 3.2 version 2 or 4 or Thunderbolt or something? There's so many new interfaces that are really hitting the market now, and they're saying, talk to your your field engineer about that. We're not going to say anything online, which I think if they really weren't going to do anything, they'd say no. And that implies to me that they're doing something, but I wouldn't bet farm on it. but it seems a positive thing, and it seems to be quite widespread because lots of people are asking that question. But I want to get the routing finished on this pretty quickly here and get at least the first cut sent off to be fabbed, and perhaps we'll have something in the works. I was hoping to give a more detailed write-up about it over the weekend, but things got complicated as they are wont to do. So that's my immediate report.
That sounds very good, Dave. Thank you. I'm curious, you say you're sending this board off. What exactly does this board do? What's the scope of it?
Well, this board has the same, it has the form that John Ackerman and I agreed on, I agreed so that would fit in a box with the time, with the TCX or OCXO, or TCXO that, or GPSDO, I guess, that he was working on and also having, but it would fit, the two boards would fit side by side. So this is 100 by 100 millimeters, which turns out to be kind of oceans of space. And on one side of the board, I'll have through hole pin headers that I'll just hand solder for the Cypress module for the whole developer kit, and you just plug it in. And there are a lot of advantages to that. One being that there's some other interesting features on that board that could be useful, including a little debugger, which could be very useful in some settings. But anyhow, and the boards in the past have sold for $48 or something, and it would be very it's hard to compete with that for unless you get pretty good volume, and they can be unplugged and replaced if they get fried. The other thing is it has through hole components, or through holes for the 2208 module from LTC, that the A to D module, and a right angle connector on the underside of the board, so you can plug in different variants of that, of which there are 12 or something. And that has the advantage of being well tuned for different strategies, but presumably at least that part would be replaced in the same area on the top side of the board with footprints. Once we know what we want, we just populate the footprints for the 2208 and leave off the pin header for the module. Maybe leave out some jumpers or something, and then that would be most of a board. But it will have to have some of the front end stuff. There is and I've at least put footprints for an LTC 6400 or something else amplifier that would go on the board, and some other circuitry, particularly the GPIO stuff that's in Oscar's HF 103 that allows access to the I2C, SPI, some of those things. I've populated that onto the board. That'll allow us to explore uses for those things and control some aspects of it in ways we need to. But we'll be, again, I'll probably put out another request for thoughts from anybody who's willing to suggest before I send something off to the great beyond. But I do want to see how quick I can get something turned around. I'd rather blow a few dollars on some boards that aren't quite useful in the end, as opposed to so I can see, I can get a graphic object lesson for my mistakes. And so that's what I'm doing. I hope that's what you want to hear.
That sounds great to me.
Okay.
I'm really excited to see it come along, and I think it sounds good.
I have a question, Dave. Did you figure out which of the 2208 modules to start with?
Well, yes, there's one that's, kind of the most obvious one for this use. There's also the two that I happen to have, and I expect right off the bat I'll use one or the other of those for my purposes. And I hadn't been able to find, last I looked, the variant of that module that was the most optimal. But I have the schematics.
Well, but what are you trying to do with it? What frequency range are you trying to work with?
Well, the one that's you looked at the options, I believe, last week, and
Right, we were looking at that.
The lower frequency, the one that not necessarily goes to 1 or even 10 kilohertz or something, but there, whatever covers the band.
There's like a 1 megahertz to 70 megahertz, and then there was the choice of LVDS or CMOS level.
We're going to do CMOS. I don't think LVDS is an option for several reasons that I can't quote right now. But I think much as I'd like to do LVDS, that may have to remain a
Does the USB interface not do LVDS?
It does. It doesn't. I don't believe it does it at the highest data rates. I think that's not an option.
That doesn't make sense. LVDS is faster than CMOS.
I know, but there's something about if you clock it above 100 megahertz, you can't use the LVDS. I don't know if that's true.
David, someone Cypress, and Cypress explicitly said that the FX3 does not support LVDS.
Oh, okay.
Oh, is that it? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I can find you the link if interested, but that's what they said in the forums. I mean, so.
Yeah, that's too bad because it's also a lot lower noise.
Yeah, but that's.
But that's how it is. Okay.
I would certainly do LVDS if it was possible, and maybe they'll come out with something that could. But otherwise, well, the things that scare me the most, things like supply and being able to get these things made.
FPS outlook void.
We're looking positive.
FPS outlook void.
Jonathan?
You need to mute your mic, Jonathan.
Sorry about that.
Okay,
So,
go ahead, Dave.
Anything else I can address? Let's see, seemed to be an awful lot of discussion of an awful lot of positive potential in all this, but I'm just trying to keep my nose on what's, on the kind of mundane, getting a basic foundation out there, and I'll spin it again in a week if need be. Doesn't bother me. So Michael ACOG is driving down the road.
Yeah, yes.
So that's any other questions that I can answer? Some stuff I'm not thinking of.
But Dave, you've got a 27 meg crystal on your board. What's that for?
I really, well, the HF 103 that I was using as the primary launching point, the schematic that Oscar Stella did, I believe his first version that BBRF 103 ran everything off of the SI 5351 and I don't remember what crystal, but he in the HF 103 he was trying to get a lower jitter out and use just an RF, just use a fairly simple crystal. Whether that's an advantage I can't speak to, but the fact is most of the clocking really is going to be derived from this GPS DO board that John Ackerman's making, and really I put that crystal on there so there'd be a place for it, and I may disable it, or there's some questions I haven't answered to my own satisfaction yet. I've been trying to unscramble my nets, but
All right, thanks, Dave.
Dave?
Yes.
Hey, for the next generation, the 10 gig, have you looked at the Intel JHL or 7440? I think is a Thunderbolt that should allow us to go to 10 gigs, even higher than that.
Probably 10 gigs per lane, or 10
Yeah, I'll send you the link here. I mean, I was just looking the other day. I thought I need to tell Dave, and then I forgot, of course, to
Well,
message you.
I have seen that and the 8000 JHL
Yeah.
8, or it's not, I mean, not 8, but maybe it's 6. There's a earlier version that's a little faster, and then there's the most recent one that's essentially that's really, really fast. And frankly, I just hadn't wanted to go there. I've looked at anything. I've really spent a lot of time digging around trying to find anything that might do this sort of thing. And FTDI has a USB 3 thing that's not particularly programmable, and the way I read it, it's not quite as fast, but it might be that's in the same vein as the Cypress one. I suspect there'll be other manufacturers, but certainly Intel. Without Intel doing it, there are no end devices. If they don't do it, there's no reference. And there are 3 types of chips for these high-speed interfaces. There's the host chips that go on the motherboards, and probably a 5, I don't know what all's in them, but they're of no concern to us because that's somebody else's job. There are bridges, various kinds of bridges, and I don't really understand all the situations where that makes sense. And there are also switches in there, switches and bridges. But I don't know what and then there are for the remote component of these high-speed interfaces, there are chips that are designed, most as far as I can tell, to be to go in a box, which you can now buy. Apple people use them a lot, that lets you plug in 3 monitors and big SSD cards and everything. It's a what do you call it, a docking station sort of arrangement. And as far as I can tell, those don't interest us either. though I don't really know if there's anything in there that would be useful to us. And then there are these few, like the one you just quoted, that are more equivalent to what we're trying to do. But it looked like I'd have to get into, some kind of get more involved with Intel than I've ever known
Okay.
how to do. It's just like you need some more direct conduit for information than I have to really understand, or more experience to really understand what some of these things do. But that one looks like it really, yeah, that's the really fast one. 4 lanes of PCIe 4 or PCIe
And
5, something, I don't know.
and the thing that surprised me, Dave, is that Mauser sold them for $14.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah, so that's why I wanted to tell you. If you look at something that could be interesting, that could be, I don't know if they sell a board, but that's something to keep an eye on. That's all what I say.
Well, I would appreciate it if you guys would keep an eye on it. I mean, they're capable, those
Yeah.
are capable of way more bandwidth than I know of any reason to use for radio projects, but never say never. And for one thing, and also it just may be the cheapest solution and the most, compact. So yeah, I'd love other more talented folks' opinion of some of those things. I just haven't wanted to complicate the discussion.
No, yeah.
I perceive a certain amount of reluctance to complicate the discussion more than we had than necessary. So I've been avoiding that.
No, this is just looking at the future, nothing.
Yeah, but that chip is really, yeah. But you have to apparently, looking at them closely, they have to go to smaller and smaller dies to be able to support these speeds. That you have to go to some of the fairly recent small dies, die shrinks to be able to do some of this stuff. You can't do it with old 40 or 80 nanometer stuff. It's got to be the latest fabric, the latest chip stuff. So that's beyond my.
So, Dave, is that a problem with some of the board and fab shops with only doing 4-layer boards and such?
No, it's not about that. This is about, these are really high speed devices. Yep. And they look scary to me, but and what I mean by smaller dies, I mean the silicon inside of them.
Inside.
The individual, the process nodes, what they call the process nodes in the industry, I think. They're Intel, the Xeons and things are 7 and 11 nanometer and below currently, and for the highest end chips out there, and these kind of are getting down to where they need to be done almost that small, just because of the time constants and the capacitance and the who knows. I don't know anything about that, but on the other hand, the PCI, at least for the advantage of using them remains that using something like Thunderbolt or USB 4, one thing, it's going to be cheap because there's going to be a lot of it out there. For another thing, it gets it out. It gives you at least a meter. You can put it away from the CPU without, and it's has a long established history of being pretty robust, and all. It's just not the kind of territory. It's not, you're not in the same league as doing I2C and SPI interfaces. It's another monster altogether.
Well, do we have any other questions on this? I want to mention Rob Robinette showed up after the roll call. So any comments, Rob?
I've just been working with, I have modified all 5 of my, the piece of the RX 888s. I've added a external clock interface, and I've been testing them, kind of end-to-end testing. I'm using, excuse me, just a second. I've been using the Phil's Beacon Blaster, which is, you may see in the background there, as the data source, and it's GPS disciplined, and I use it as the source. It's transmitting on, well, right now 4 bands, 80, 40, 20, and 10, and it's accurate to, well, he does 3 decimals after the hertz, so he goes down to millihertz accuracy of the transmit frequency. So it's, and then I've been receiving on a Kiwi, and then I have going through all of the 5 PCI RX 888s, and Phil software, they come out basically at the resolution that I can get out of the JTX decoder. So, you know, at 28 megahertz, Phil transmits at 0.2 hertz, 200 millihertz above the 10 hertz, and that's what JT9 reports. So I think it seems to be end-to-end that I've got GPS disciplining working, both on transmit and receive. And this means I can now start deploying these units. I'm going to put one of the 888s, a GPS discipline 888 out at KFS this week. I have one going into Santa Fe, New Mexico for the eclipse. And of course, I'll take one out to Winnemucca for the eclipse. So Phil and I are now working on the IQ recording features. We should be able to record 16 kilosample IQs for each of the whisper bands, as well as for all of the time station bands. In fact, I was just looking at, I guess I want to put in the CHU frequencies as well as the WWV frequencies. So we'll be recording all of those, hopefully, but at all of the sites running Whisper Demon and 888s. Phil has a background project to, he would like to be able to record the full 0 to 30 megahertz spectrum for the hours before, during, and after the eclipse. So I don't know. He's been out working on other things, so we haven't been engaged for the last few days. But I have a test set up here. You can the NVIe mass storage devices easily support the data write speeds. You know, you get 125 megabytes per second off of the 888. So it looks like we have to test it, and I haven't seen the software mode yet. But anyway, that's his goal, and my goal is to just get all the IQ records for the. We're doing 16 kilosamples just to be sure that the 5 kilohertz bandwidth, around the time signals, that there's no filtering effects that would affect the phase accuracy. So so that's I think almost all is now focused on getting ready for the eclipse, and I think that the mods that I put together were pretty much derived from what Clint described. It does seem useful to put. I took these heat sinks they're just double-sided tape. It's almost a thermal insulator between these things as delivered. So you can easily pop them off, and it takes quite a bit of Goo Gone to get rid of it. But then I epoxied it using RJ Weld. This is this iron-based epoxy that Clint recommended. So between that and the 50 by 50 millimeter thermal pad that's between the printed circuit board, most of the heat, if you leave it upside down, then the printed circuit board is here. There's a thermal pad that's in there, and then there's this heat sink on top. And I think it does a reasonably good job of dissipating the heat. These things get to be about 105, 106 degrees Fahrenheit after running for long periods of time. Don't know what the chip temperatures are inside, but I'm sure that the having a a mechanical contact rather than air insulator around them, the devices, have to mean that the chips are running at more reasonable temperatures. So so this is so this was, I don't like dealing with hardware. I much prefer the software side of things. So I'm actually volunteering to make these modifications now that I know how to do it. If I have the hole punches for putting, and I have got lots of switches and all of the, I now have a procedure. So if you're holding off using your 888 because you're concerned about the thermal stuff, I've just volunteered to, I'm going to have to do another batch of these, and doing 2 or 3 or 4 of them is not a lot more work than doing one. So I'm kind of volunteering to help anyone with the 888 who's concerned about its thermal properties.
Hey, Rob.
Yes.
Since I'm up here in Detroit, I plan to be hopefully on the center line for the big one next year, for the big eclipse. Would it now, not knowing all the details of how that black box works, do you think it would be possible to get one that I could take with me and set up, just my
more than possible. In fact, in fact, what I'm going to be, I'm going to have a complete transmit and receive setup that I'm taking out to Winnemucca. I'm not sure I'm going to drive out to someplace to do the full eclipse. I'm not sure if I'm up for that. So yeah, somebody who's, if you were interested in doing both, I mean, in the case, I set up. Yeah. Well, you'd have to do. Yeah.
The one next month is no joy. There's no way I can, other than from the home QTH outside Detroit here. It's just not going to happen. But down in Ohio, that's like a 4 to 5 hour drive from my home QTH, right on Interstate 75, and I'm there, right on the center line. So, and the thought was just find someplace, a public park or something, and set up, a long wire receiving antenna, the HF radio, the laptop, and then just sit there and let it record.
Yeah. Well, that'd be fine. That'd be great. Oh, I'd be happy. Of course, you need a host to go with it. I can supply you the complete package. You need something to attach it to, because to run the K9Q software. So it's.
I mean, I've got I'm just going to take my laptop.
Yeah.
And hopefully there's some indication of how many megabytes or of a hard drive.
You don't need to. The software, you need to plug this into a dedicated computer, and it needs to be tested. So they come as a pair. This thing really, in my opinion, you need to pair it with a host of running a known version of Linux, known versions of. Yeah. Yes. It needs this. Yeah. You need this. So you need to. But I mean, you know these are little hosts. I mean, the hosts that they're not talking about it all is, can be run off a battery. So it's,
one thing
well,
that needs to be
they've been running-
stressed is it isn't as important to be dead center on the eclipse. It's not like we're observing.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to be dead center
itself.
on the eclipse.
Yeah.
I'm saying that the point is that the reflection point is at between your receiver and transmitter is at the center of the eclipse.
Yep.
So we, Rob, let me put my email in the chat.
Okay.
And if you would email me your contact information, and let's continue to have this discussion offline from the group.
Oh, good. Well, I'm definitely looking for people that I actually have 2 complete systems, transmit receive systems that could be deployed. I was going to talk with John Ackerman because, he's in Dayton and he's got that remote site up that's running Whisper Demon already, but it isn't GPS disciplined. It's Kiwis that aren't GPS disciplined. So I was going to propose that John upgrade, because with this we can record all of the all the IQ data as well as all the whisper signals, and we'll get a lot more valuable scientific data out of a 888 than we can get out of a Kiwi.
Could we back up a moment, Rob? You just kind of ran through the modifications that you had made, but if you documented those so that we hardware guys can duplicate it?
Yes. Well, I haven't documented, but Clint, KA7OEI, has a blog page where he describes the modifications, and I basically followed his instructions.
Okay.
And let me. I will look aside here. I'll find his blog page and post it up.
Excellent. Thank you.
But Clint has deeply investigated the thermal issues of the 888, and I don't know that he discusses the external clock input is trivial. I mean, it's just
I've worked that one out myself.
But
the thermal is very much of interest.
Yeah, I found it not too hard to do. I mean, I decided not. Some of the things he describes I didn't do, but I ended up doing the thermal, the epoxying that heat sink on top of it, and so I ended up doing most of what he described in his blog entry. But I'll have to.
Rob, my email is in the chat.
I see that.
If you would please send me your contact information, and let's continue this conversation offline.
Okay, I'll do that. Very good.
Thank you.
Dave Whitten had a question.
I just was going to ask, is there any published information about JB Weld as a
let me find Clint is the one who introduced me to the JB Weld as the epoxy solution.
I've been trying to get my dentist to use it for other reasons. I'm kind of hoping to get the who is the guy in the Sean Connery movie, the steel with the steel teeth. I've had lots of difficulty lately.
Yeah, Rob, can you post a link to Clint's article?
I see his blog, but I don't see anything about the RX-888.
It's dissected into subjects. His website. So when you get in one of the subject areas, it doesn't link over to the other subjects.
Yeah. I'm searching my email list for his.
Franco just.
While he's looking for that, could we get on with Tom's discussion, Adam? That sounded pretty interesting to me.
Yes. Go ahead, Tom.
Okay. It's been a very, very busy week. I've been trying to isolate why the packets are dropping from the KA9Q software. And eventually I found that the Raspberry Pi 4 gigabit Ethernet interface seems to not be extremely robust. It tends to dribble packet errors on transmit. Receive, it seems to be a little better. I ended up buying a 1 liter mini PC. They're called 1 liter because they're about the size of 1 liter of liquid. The unit I've got 7 inches by 7 inches by 1.4, or about 18 by 18 by 3 centimeters. And it's a Core i5 11th gen with 32 gigs of DDR4 memory and PCIe memory. Well, and so I ported KA9Q over to that box running Ubuntu 22.04. Interestingly, the Raspberry Pi 4 took about 3 hours to do the FFTW wisdom computation, and this box took 3 minutes and 2 seconds.
Yeah.
To do the same thing. So I'd say it's a lot more performant. Connecting it up, the Ethernet is clean in both directions. I've been able to run iPerf 3 between boxes, and I get 0 retries back to back through an Ethernet switch, through a Ubiquiti switch. So I cleaned up all of those. The net result is when I run KA9Q radio on that box, I get exactly the same 0.1% packet drop rate as I did with the Raspberry Pi 4. So that was a little bit of a puzzle. I was not able to get the Pi 4 to talk directly to the Dell host, and it would just error out. With the Lenovo, it works perfectly. I can hardwire just a gigabit Ethernet cable between the Dell host and the Lenovo mini PC. It runs iPerf 3 error-free. And with that, there are no dropped packets. And so I ran Franco's T-Shark script on both the transmit and receive side. And what that does is capture all the Ethernet packets, parses them for the RTP real-time protocol headers, and then looks for dropped RTP packets. It finds no dropped RTP packets on the transmit side, but it does on the receive side only when going through a switch. I've tried 2 different Ethernet switches, one a Ubiquiti switch and another an 8-port hardware switch. And the 8-port hardware switch has nothing else connected to it, just those 2 ports. The spec says that multicast packets should be flooded if you don't know where they're going. And so I would have expected the hardware to flood, but I do get a 0.1% packet loss rate. In searching on the internet why that might be, there's a phenomenon in Ethernet switches called micro bursting, where if it gets a large number of packets too quickly, you can overflow the input buffers on the Ethernet switch, causing loss of packets. And right now, that's the only theory I've got as to why it might be losing packets. I've kind of exhausted all the other theories. And it's interesting, the 2 switches have exactly the same packet loss rate. And I don't know if there's other switches that are well tested for multicast. I think what it means is that trying to use KA9Q at high sample rates over a multicast network, I'm using it at 192, a single 192 kilosample per second channel seems to go beyond the capabilities of whatever commonly available Ethernet ASIC that the switch manufacturers are putting in the switches. And so I don't know if anyone else has insight as to why multicast packets are being lost, but TCP packets have 0 retries for multi-gigabit bursts running at a gigabit per second. I can run the gigabit per second burst with iPerf, and there's not a dropped packet inside anywhere. So I've done a ton of work. The 1 liter PC is a real winner in my box. It's tiny, You can bolt it to the back of a monitor if you want to. It's very performant. And right now, the only thing I can duplicate is the Ethernet switch itself seems to be part of the packet loss problem. So that's been basically the last week.
How much did one of those better computers cost?
I got this one on Amazon for about $600. The I've looked at the Orange Pi 5 and 5 Plus, and when you get a 5 Plus plus an NVMe memory and an eMMC module, and you get it outfitted with RAM, and then you buy a case, you're in the $200 plus range. You can get refurbished 1 liter PCs with a Core i6 in about the same price range as you can get an Orange Pi 5 fully fitted out. So I figured the 1 liter PC, but if I was going to get one, I wanted to get one where performance would never be called into question as a reason for losing packets.
So I was going to comment that I've done some testing here too. I mentioned in the past, but not as much as you have, of course. But I also was seeing problems with just an i5 Dell computer, one of the older models, and I'm using another Intel computer, working back and forth between them, passing through a couple of switches. One thing I noticed too was when you first fire everything up and start it, it seems to run clean for a brief period, and then it begins to drop packets. So it kind of bodes well for the buffer overflow thing, which is what I was thinking is going on possibly anyway.
You would think you'd have the same buffers in TCP and RTP, but a lot of Ethernet switches have what's called a fast path and a slow path. And the fast path is all hardware, and the slow path diverts the packets through a CPU for packet by packet inspection. Typically, those are used for ICMP packets, or if you want to ping the switch itself, anything that's kind of an exception packet. And I'm wondering if the switches may treat RTP as an exception packet because it's got to do IGMP processing and figure out, gee, did that packet just subscribe to a multicast group or unsubscribe from a multicast group? I don't know. So my guessing is that maybe RTP packets are considered slow path rather than fast path packets. It's the only one I can come up with.
And then the other thought I had is I wonder if he needs to stream as fast as he's streaming, or can he take a breather, so to speak, while he's sending RTP packets, make what he's sending smaller blocks or something, to give the switches time to catch up, I suppose.
Yeah, I depopulated the switch, so there were only 2 items plugged into it. The sender on KA9Q and the receiver on KA9Q. No other connections on the hardware switch, just to make sure, and IGMP should be off on that switch. So I tried to give the switch the benefit of hardware only, but didn't seem to solve the problem. So something strange going on. We may have an expert in Ethernet switches who knows that there's some kind of a multicast problem with switches.
Well, you almost have to, if you're going to use multicast, you need to have a switch that's IGMP aware, and you need to enable that feature in the switch, and then you have to ensure that the sender and the receivers issue their IGMP join messages periodically.
Yeah,
I've
done that and tested it.
Okay,
so IGMP is working and seeing the group subscription messages come and go.
So the multicast streams are only going to the ports that are subscribing to it on your switch. Have you verified that?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, okay, so well, I can't say, I'm running several sites, KFS, OE9 GHV. I have 2 RX 888s here that I'm feeding through a switch to I bought a little host, actually a Ryzen 5, amazing beast of a thing, for $250. and I haven't noticed any packet loss. Now the RTMP packets, I wrote the receiver code, and to be honest, I should go back and look at it. I need to or talk to Phil about that. The interface that I use in Whisper Daemon to record the multicast joins the multicast group and just grabs opens the file descriptor and asks for RGMP packets. The way Phil does it is he however many, if you have 10 bands of you're listening on, he puts them all into the same multicast group with different SSRCs, which means that for the 15 high frequency bands, you generate about a 3 megabit per second multicast stream from the RX888 and 9Q machine. And I can't say I've noticed any packet loss. Now, maybe he's hiding it from me, but I don't think so, because I sit there and I look at the size of the receiver. I just sit there and receives the packets, and then when the clock ticks every 1 minute, it writes out closes the current file and writes a new file. And those files are exactly same size to the byte, running for hours. So that suggests that I'm not losing anything unless the TCP stack is filling something in.
At that sample rate, I did not lose any packets either.
Oh, and what sample are you trying to run?
I'm running a single stream of 192K IQ, which comes
192 kilobits.
Yeah, 192.
That's much less than I'm running through it. I'm running 10 megabits of multicast out of a
192K kilosamples. Okay, there's 8 bytes per sample.
Oh, okay. Well, that's still, what is that? That's 1.6 megabits. Still, you're putting out less than my systems are.
Could it be that you're not really checking though, Rob, that you're missing data and it's
if I were missing them, then I would get WAV files that were not the right size.
Actually, no. It turns out that the receiver injects 0 value samples for missing packets.
Okay. Well, let me check. Okay.
Right.
Okay. Good. That's a good clue. I'll talk with Phil about that, about seeing if we can, if I can include in my receive code some way to detect the, if there are lost packets in transmission, because I'm of course, that's the danger of any UDP protocol. Well,
I'm running, Franco gave me a T-Shark script. So I run T-Shark on the receiver, and the script prints out when you drop packets.
What's the name of this?
T-Shark is a Linux utility. It's kind of like a stripped down command line version of Wireshark.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And so what it does is it will, his script will print out sequence numbers, and when there's some sequence numbers dropped, it'll print out what gets dropped. And then of course, in GNU Radio, you see that 0 valued samples get inserted in place of the drops.
Oh, that's good. But I was oblivious to that. If it's happening on my systems, I've been oblivious. I haven't, in practice, of course, we can tolerate the Whisper protocol tolerates such blocks of 0 samples, looks like noise bursts. So
that's right. But in scientific data, if you're trying to study the hemisphere and you have that data in the IQ,
of course. No, of course. I'm glad to hear that. That's a valuable observation, and I will. I definitely want to include in. I work hard in Whisper Daemon to document all of the statistics and error conditions, so that and include such information like receiver overload events, get documented and appended to the spot reports and other recordings into the wave file recordings. So So I certainly would want to, to be documenting Ethernet transmission loss problems. And of course, for a lot of sites, the receiver is on the same physical machine. Whisper Demon's running on the same machine. That doesn't work for somewhat mysterious reasons. You cannot run Whisper Demon at the same time on a machine running 888 with RX 8AQ. That the combination of the two, it just doesn't work. And have someone hopefully might try to. We're looking to get a port of real-time Linux to the Orange Pi, in the hopes that because the CPU isn't that busy. I mean, there's 8 cores, and I even put in a feature to throttle back at the application level, throttle back the number of CPUs used by Whisper Demon, in the hopes that that would help the Linux scheduler to keep CPUs available for the incoming USB 3 stream. But that's a crude technique, and it didn't make any difference. So I think that there's something, the problems are happening at the Linux scheduler level.
I
And
think it's one of those Orange Pies too. So I'd be interested if you get some other OS running or that would work on it. That's all. You have to go out and sign up with the Chinese to get information, I guess, for the first install. And I just kind of broke down there and decided.
Yeah. I'm a little less enchanted with the Orange Pi than I was before. It's for the price. By the time you have a case and all this stuff, I bought this Ryzen 5 5560. It's 5 times as powerful as any computer I've owned. I mean, its CPU benchmarks are 18,000. I mean, it's by gamer standards, it's a mid-range thing, but by our processing standards, compared to the ThinkCenter, i5 6500s, or even has twice the CPU power at 1/3 the power of an i5 9500. So, and one of those costs you the same price as the brand new little Ryzen I just got today. So I'm turning my attention away from these little single board computers, because if you look at a Orange Pi, when it consumes 15 watts CPU alone, when it's really doing work, that's okay. Maybe this Ryzen consumes twice as much. Haven't yet to measure it, but boy, it's going to be done a whole lot quicker. So the average power consumption is probably going to be lower with a Ryzen. I was inspired by, I've been using these Intel i5s, older generations, refurbished, and now the brand new AMD. I'm really struggled with the Ryzen, the performance.
Well, we gotta. But Tom's point is that the problem may be at the switch in the middle. And if that's not resolved, then doesn't matter what kind of computer you got over on the other side.
Well, you could do a direct connect. You can just do
when I do that, it runs a direct connect runs ever free, but that kind of defeats the purpose of multicasting.
Yeah. So you've used it. What, you have one of the Ubiquity smart switches that you've used it with?
I've got a USW 24, which is 24 ports of Gig E and two ports of 10. And it runs iPerf benchmarks flawlessly.
Yeah, but multicast is a different game.
So I've also got a Netgear 8-port switch. And I tried that just because it has no brains, and so hopefully the hardware is doing all the work. but it behaves identically to the Ubiquity.
Yeah, we went through this when we first brought Phil's code up out of KFS. The Ubiquity switch, it's very hard to enable IGMP snooping on it. You have to do it from the I think almost from a command line. You can't even use there's no GUI interface for enabling the IGMP monitoring.
Well,
And
yeah, I run a unified controller, network controller, and it
yeah.
has a GUI in it for doing that.
Okay, there may be something. Let me talk to someone who one of Brett, KG6RGW is whiz at all this stuff and knows this firmware developers, knows the different versions of firmware that are inside the UGW series, and there are some subtleties in getting the that switch. There are. Maybe I'm wrong, but I recall at one point he said the only way, he knows how to run, the unified controllers and such, and he says the only way you can actually get they really don't want to support multicast on that UGW series, and so they made it very hard, and it actually came from there's some bugs in it that were in that whole protocol suite implementation that were inherited from Cisco's original implementation in their series. So there's
what's the UGW series? I don't remember.
Unified Gateway UGW, and they have 24 and 48. We've got I think we have a 48 port one out of KFS that I got from Brett when they're unobtainium, I think, for the last couple of years.
I've got a couple of what are they? The Edge switch, Ubiquity.
Edge switch. Yeah.
They're sitting around. Do you know anything about them? Have you had any experience with those?
Again, there's lots of subtleties with firmware versions on all of that stuff, and I can't. I really would have to defer to Brett's understanding. We were there at the site, and actually it was the first night we brought up Phil's code out of KFS, and we couldn't get multicast, and they were getting dropped and everything. And I don't know, I went away for a couple hours, and Phil and Brett worked away at it, and I came back, and Brett had figured it all out and got it working. So I missed all the great.
To do a brain dump.
So he's the guy, but you bring up a very good point that I should be looking at. If nothing else, I could be looking for blocks, all 0 blocks. I mean that it's amazing to me that I take the 3 megabit stream, which with 13 bands of different SSRDs, and I throw away 14 of them. I'm just sitting there looking at because they're all in one series, and I throw them all away, and still it uses hardly any CPU or memory bandwidth to do so. So anyway, I can add that to my WD recorder. At least look for it at the application level. So
okay.
Tom, I need to get going to bed, but I can try to see if I can scavenge the switch and give it a try too over here to see how it goes.
I'll be doing.
The other thing is your smart switch, the Ubiquity. Do you have an interface where you can see drop packets like statistics collected on the interface to see if it shows anything there?
No, they discontinued that about 2 versions ago in the software.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
Yeah. Yeah. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Night, Franco.
Good night.
Thanks. So Rob, what's the name of the website with the mods for the RX-888?
I put it in the chat. It's in there.
Okay,
It's there. So.
Yes, I just put on, I'm looking at mine and it does not match the description in the blog. I'm wondering if some of the newer ones have been modified. I have a bigger pad than earlier versions. much longer strip. And I don't find, he says he could put a piece of paper in between the heat sinks in the case, and I certainly can't on mine. They seem very well attached. Try to,
I don't know. They seem well attached, but if I put a putty knife in there and popped them all off, they seemed like
yeah,
they
I'm
were,
gonna pop one off and see what's.
the ones on the side are the ones on the side are purely decorative. The only one that's
Right.
meaningful is the big one on top.
So I
And-
figure
and
that's
they-
a good way to figure out what the attachment is without.
Yeah.
destroying it,
Anyway,
but yeah, interesting. But
Yeah,
it
it
also, did you buy one of the large pads and cut it up? Is that what you're saying? So you have some extra material.
I bought well for $8. It'd be cheaper for me to buy one for you and have Amazon drop it off, because they're $8 from for $8 on or maybe it's $10. You get a 100 by 100 millimeter pad from Amazon.
Oh, okay. He was talking about $32 from DigiKey.
That was perhaps a better quality pad, but
I bought some of that, and it's quite a big sheet for one thing. It's
right.
about big, and it really is dense. I mean, it feels like my wife's radiation protection stuff. It's
Well, he
really,
does say it has twice the thermal conductivity of what's been
right.
used.
And it's not that hideous. I could share some if someone would like. I probably will never have a use for most of it, but it's pretty dense.
I can't say
I'd be
that.
interested in having you send me some.
Yeah, send me an email and remind me, and I'll do it. Yeah, it feels like whatever's in those vests that radiologists wear.
Yeah,
that's good.
Some very high Z material.
Yeah, interesting. He does to specifically mention the JB Weld gray, which apparently must have metal turning it gray.
It is iron filings in it, apparently.
Yeah, there's this. Is that the steel one?
The original.
Yeah.
I got two pairs of tubes for $12 from Amazon. So
you can get them from any hardware store usually too.
And yeah, I don't have a
Yeah, I
hardware
think
store
Home
near me.
Depot has JB Weld.
Oh yeah, you can get it from auto parts stores. I mean, you
I
don't
know
have
I've got some versions of it. I don't know if
Yeah.
I agree with.
Well, they're different versions, so you do want to get
Right.
the original one that has the iron filings in it.
I
So,
understand that.
You can also get silver loaded epoxy and stuff, but it's a lot more
Right.
expensive and a lot smaller tubes.
I've got a bunch of that. I don't know if it's still good, but
stuff doesn't
from
last.
various motherboard kits.
I mean, I have described to you guys, I think in previous weeks, we have verified that when everything is properly adjusted, the receive bandwidths especially are properly adjusted, and the AGC, maybe I didn't discuss this last week, but that we've been exploring the use or turning off the AGC, and that seems to that helps not so much in terms of decoding performance, but it does help restore the usefulness of the noise measurements. Hang on a second. Okay, I've got a veterinary emergency here, not emergency, but a task here. So I'm going to step aside. But we've established that you can turn off the AGC and set it to a fixed AGC of 60 and get excellent results, and apparently no overloading. And you want
Depending
to
on
put
your local environment, you may have to modify that.
We're studying it, but there's a variety of
That's
environments.
Good starting point.
So it seems to we've got I have about 6 test sites, beta test sites, so that seems to work at all of them. So I'll be
Right.
back in a minute.
Do we have your email, Dave?
It's it should be all over the place, but
I think it is.
in any case, it's WITTEND. Let me just put it in the chat.
All right.
That's a lot more.
Let me mention that in the past, I've worked with an epoxy it was called Stockcast 2850 FT, which is a thermally conductive material. And it's owned by Loctite now, and you can still get, I'm just looking on the internet and I see it out there. You just search for Stockcast 2850 FT, you'll find it. And it has a good data sheet with thermal conductivity information. I think you said you weren't finding that for the JB Weld stuff, so maybe you can't compare it easily, but its purpose in life was to be a good thermal conductor when it was first developed. So
some of these adhesives actually are very well documented.
yeah.
I don't know.
Some of the ones that had iron fillings in the past, they tended to oxidize and cause problems in time. So that could be an issue later if that's what it really has. Okay, that's all I have for tonight. I'm going to go ahead and check out here too, guys. See ya.
Thank you very much, everyone. I really appreciate it.
73 is all.
73.